Welcome to Small Town Dark Truths. I'm your host, Alexis, and this is the 5th episode. Today is a special episode because even though we are back into the true crime, I know we took a little bit of a break, but we're back into the true crime, but this one's actually going to be 2 cases instead of just one. They are cases that I definitely feel are worth talking about, but they don't have enough details publicly to make a whole entire episode about. So we're going to be going into 2 cases. I think I said 3 in the preview. I was going to do 3, but I decided to just do 2. So those. But yeah, so every season we talk about a different small town, and every episode is a different crime that happened in that small town. This season we are traveling to Winder, Georgia. It is a small town about an hour northeast of Atlanta. And yeah, so let's get on with the crimes for today. We're diving into one of the most violent, chilling, and heartbreaking cases to ever come out of Winder, Georgia. This case began as a routine early morning argument, but it exploded into a multi-state manhunt with 2 women shot and a kidnapping that nearly turned fatal. This is the story of Ralph Haywood Jones Jr., a name that still echoes through Barrow County and beyond. Winder, Georgia. It's a town that sits quiet most days. A mix of old neighborhoods, road tracks, and the kind of streets where everyone knows everyone. But behind those familiar faces, there are stories that never make it on the postcards. Stories of domestic violence, stories of desperation, and moments that lives split in 2. One of those moments came on June 10th, 2019. Ralph Haywood Jones Jr., a 30-year-old, or I think he was 30-year-old when he officially got convicted, so he's around late 20s, had a complicated history with his ex-girlfriend. They shared children, they shared past traumas, and there had been fear. Enough fear that she wanted to meet him that morning, but she did not want to go alone. She asked a friend to come with her for safety. That friend would later be found lying in a driveway, bleeding from a gunshot wound in the abdomen. It was early, quiet, and still, but something in Jones snapped early that morning. According to federal documents and the DOJ, what happened next was sudden and very explosive. Jones pulled a gun at the friend first, leaving her in a residential driveway in Winder. Then he turned the gun on his ex-girlfriend, shooting her in the back of the neck. She survived, barely. But of course, Jones did not stop there. Panic took over and he made a decision to turn a violent assault into a federal kidnapping case. He forced his ex-girlfriend into his car and drove her across state lines heading towards South Carolina. That one choice, crossing the state line with a injured, non-consenting victim, would bring the FBI directly into this case. Hours later in Fairplay, South Carolina, Jones pulled into a parking lot of a small store. His ex-girlfriend was bleeding, weak, and drifting in and out of consciousness. He left her there, dumped her in a parking lot, and ditched the car. When officers found her, she was, in their words, bleeding and incoherent. She was lucky to be alive. Law enforcement immediately began looking for Jones. The FBI, Winder Police, and the Oconee County Sheriff's Office in South Carolina were working together. The kind of multi-agency coordination that only happens when time is running out. They found him not far away, hiding in the bushes beside the store. He was hiding in the bushes. beside the store that he dumped her at, and he was just sitting there through all of it. Gotta make you think. But the threat was finally over. The legal battle was just beginning. One of the most interesting legal angles in this case was the emergency phone tracking used by the investigators. Jones had actually argued that some of this evidence should be suppressed and that real-time phone location tracking violated his Fourth Amendment rights. But the court did reject that argument. Why? Because there was a woman with a gunshot wound in her neck and she was missing. Because the officer believed that she was in immediate danger because, well, she was. He shot her in the back of the neck. Okay, you don't talk about rights when you're shooting women over here, okay? You know what I mean? Let's not do that. And because when situations where there is a threat to life, the public safety exemption applies. Thank the Lord. Investigators also questioned Jones before giving Miranda warnings, but the court allowed those statements as well, again under the public safety exemption. Their priority was finding the victim alive, which I think is great. You know, God knows what would have happened if they didn't do all this. You know, she was barely even alive when they found her. Who knows what 5 more minutes would have done. You know, especially with it being over an hour away drive. He drove over an hour. Okay? It's good. It's a good thing they did this. On April 18th, 2022, Ralph Haywood Jones Jr. was guilty for kidnapping. The state charges for the shooting still exist, but the federal government took the lead because of the interstate nature of the kidnapping. During the sentencing, U.S. Attorney Ryan Buchanan, described Jones' actions as horrific and empathized the trauma inflicted not just on the victims, but the families and even Jones's children, because remember, he had children with the woman that he shot and drove across state lines bleeding out with. Crazy. The FBI called it a senseless act of violence and noted that the only thing to be thankful for is that no one had passed away. We have both victims alive, and that is rare in a case like this. It's very rare. On September 19th, 2022, Jones was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison and 5 years of unsupervised release after that. And because it's a federal sentencing, there is no parole. He will serve the majority of that time. The case was prosecuted under Project Safe Neighborhoods, a DOJ initiative targeting violent offenders and gun crimes. For locals in Winder, this case is more than a headline. It shows how quickly domestic violence can escalate into something deadly. And we have had cases like that before, and I think it's very important to talk about because some people tend to look past the signs because of fear. And I'm not just even talking about the victim in the relationship, I'm talking about family, friends. You know, you try to not think the absolute worst because you're scared that if you cross that line, you might lose your friend or you might be accusing something of worse. But your word matters, everything matters, your friend's life matters, your life matters. Just get help. How a routine visit becomes a crime scene, it reminds people that even small southern towns have dark corners. It also highlighted something very important. Victims often sense danger long before violence breaks out. Her asking her friend to come with her was a warning. A warning that sadly wasn't enough to stop what came next, but the courage of both survivors and the rapid work of the law enforcement prevented this from becoming a double homicide. When we talk about true crime, we sometimes focus on the shocking moments, the gunshot, the chase, the arrest, but this case is one that really is about survival. It's about the strength of two women who lived through a nightmare, and about a small town that was forced to face the reality of how fragile safety actually can be. Winder, Georgia may be quiet, but quiet places often have the loudest truths. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, or if you're starting to feel like the loving relationship you're in is falling, maybe not as loving as you thought it once was, and might be going into violence, please consider reaching out to the National Domestic Hotline at 800-799-SAFE. It's never too early, and it is never wrong to ask for help. Now, that case is over for this episode, so we're going to move on to the next one, which is also very heavy and very heartbreaking. I don't think any true crime cases are easy, but this next one is very difficult. But I will put a warning for the next one. There is a teenager involved, so just warning there. Teenager is involved in the next one. Teenagers, actually. But yeah, let's move on with the next case. Winder, Georgia is a town that has seen more heartbreak than most people realize. And one of the most chilling cases is the unsolved questions surrounding the murder of 19-year-old Lane Michael Bullard. This is not a famous case, this didn't go viral, and it shook Barrow County. And nearly 3 years later, the community still feels the weight of what happened. This is a story of a teenager found unalived beside his car, a quiet dirt road, and two suspects barely out of their childhood themselves. Now, again, like I said, this episode does contain violence against a teenager, but also from teenagers too. So listener discretion is definitely advised on this part. April 11th of 2022, a warm Georgia evening, two motorists were driving down a dirt road near City Pond Park. This area locals know well. It is tucked behind a sports field, quiet, not usually associated with crime. But these drivers were about to sadly stumble upon something that would change everything. They see a car pulled off to the side. At first, it looked as someone was broken down or stopped maybe to rest. But as they get closer, they see a young man lying on the ground, unresponsive, covered in blood with multiple gunshot wounds, and they immediately called 911. Within minutes, officers from the Winder Police Department arrived to the scene. They secured the area and quickly realized that this was not going to be a simple investigation. The victim was identified as Lane Michael Bullard, who again was 19 years old and a young man from Winder. His car was still there, his body was beside it, and there was shell casings scattered around him. This definitely was not an accident, and it was not self-inflicted. It was an execution-style killing. Because the scene was right outside the city limits, it was actually handed over to the Barrow County Sheriff's Department. And within hours, they called the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, or the GBI, to help. Lane's body was sent to the GBI Medical Examiner's Office for an autopsy. The early findings confirmed what deputies already suspected. Lane was shot multiple times. Investigators began piecing the final hours together, talked to anyone who maybe saw him that day, checked his phone, and looked for any known associates. But from the start, one thing was clear. This was not random. Someone wanted Lane Bullard dead, and it didn't take long for names to surface. Just within 48 hours, investigators make a major move. Two teenagers were arrested. The first is a 18-year-old, Brontavious Sims, also a Winder resident. He is charged with murder and possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. The second is a 17-year-old Jaquan Crawford from nearby Statham. He is charged with being a party to the crime of murder, meaning that investigators believe that he helped plan, assist, and participated in the killing. Both were taken into custody and both were denied bond. The community is obviously stunned. We have 3 teenagers, 1 dead and 2 in jail, all linked by a crime that seems both sudden and senseless. Even with the arrest, one thing remains frustratingly clear. Why? What happened between these young men that ended with Lane getting shot to death on a dirt road? The sheriff's office did not release a motive. The GBI did not either. Court records, at least publicly available ones, give no explanation. To this day, no official motive has ever been publicly announced. Here's what the investigators have confirmed though. Lane Bullard was alive when he arrived to the location. He was shot multiple times beside his own vehicle. 2 suspects were arrested almost immediately afterwards, and the case remains active. What we don't know, what led Lane to the park that night? Did he know the suspects personally? Was it a planned attack, a robbery, retaliation, or something else entirely? And without a public trial or anything released publicly about the case specifically, the motive is still a mystery, not just to the public, but to many people in the community. Friends of Lane describe him online as funny, loyal, and someone who definitely did not deserve this. But even their posts show confusion and heartbreak, but not answers. This is one of those cases where the official story exists, but not the full story. Winder is a small place. People talk, people speculate, but they also mourn. The death of a 19-year-old hits differently. A memorial grew online. Friends posted pictures, messages, and stories. Some expressed disbelief, some expressed anger, and some begged for justice. But for many, the biggest question hangs over the town. Why did this happen? And the lack of closure is something that Barrow County residents still feel. As of the latest public information, both suspects were arrested and charged. No public availability court outcome or sentencing has been reported, and the GBI has described the case as active and ongoing, meaning there may be more evidence, more details, possibly more people involved, or simply a long legal process that just hasn't played out publicly. But one thing for certain is that Lane Bullard's story is not over, not for his family, not for Winder, and not for justice. Now, that has been both of our cases for today, so thank you for joining me on this special episode of Small Town Dark Truths. Cases like Lane's and like Jones, it really hits you hard because it's not just tragedy, and justice isn't always swift. Luckily for the Jones case, it was swift to keep both victims alive. But, do you think that 25 years was enough for what he did? Because I've been asking that question to myself a lot. I don't know. I don't know if his sentencing was good enough for me, but let me know your thoughts with the Lane Michael Bullard case. If you have any information about the death, any information at all, definitely please talk to the Barrow County Sheriff's Office or the GBI, because again, it is active, and this 19-year-old, he passed away, and we still do not have any answers for what happened, why. So again, if you have any information at all, please contact them, because I think his family and the community and his soul deserves to be put to peace, and there needs to be justice. Okay, so don't be quiet. If you are scared, possibly because maybe saying something might be dangerous for you, which definitely happens, tell the police officers that. Go there, and let them know that you're scared for your own safety, and they will protect you too. You are not alone, and your voice matters. Now again, this has been Small Town Dark Truths. I am your host, Alexis, and keep probing, keep questioning, because dark truths often hide where we least expect them. I will see you next week. Bye! But wait, don't go anywhere, because I have a special preview for the next episode. Now, the next episode is going to be a normal episode. We're not doing multiple crimes, we're not doing folklore or whatever. We're gonna go back to one crime, but I will say this crime is not a normal one. Okay. We're gonna be kind of going a little bit out of Winder. We're gonna be going to Oconee, which did play a little bit of a part in this episode, but we are going to be going to Oconee because this crime is just too crazy and too nuts to not talk about. So I need to get it out. I've been thinking about it too much. It is a double homicide inside of their house. The husband's found day one on the ground, head missing. The wife is not found for multiple days after at the bottom of the lake. That's all I'm giving you for now. We will talk more about it next week. I will see you then. Stay safe. I love you.